In this video, I wanted to talk about the differences between Affinity Designer for the iPad and Adobe Fresco. Also to answer the question, why am I using both? Why don't I just stick to Affinity Designer? There are also some advantages of using other software simultaneously. You might have taken my other Affinity Designer courses, but I wanted to quickly run through the interface of both Affinity Designer and also the interface of Adobe Fresco to show you the individual feel of each of those softwares and how the navigation looks and what is the ease of moving in those programs. Let's quickly start with Affinity. I am assuming that you already have some knowledge of Affinity Designer. Perhaps you have taken my previous courses, like I said. I also have a beginner's course for Affinity Designer users. What you gotta know is that you have your homepage that is also called Live Docs. So right now I'm actually in another folder of mine called Botanical Art, but when I click on this arrow here, it will bring me back to my main interface. This is your Live Docs area, which is basically like your homepage. And in that homepage, you can have either individual documents or you can create projects, which are essentially folders. So we were just a second ago inside of my Botanical Art folder. Whenever you want to create a new document, and of course we will be doing all that in the course together in the lessons to come, you just select new and new document, and then it pops open a new menu. We can, for example, work in pixels here, but how to create a document in particular for this project, for this course, we will do that in the next lessons to come, but this is where you create new documents. Then under the open menu, you can open a document that you have maybe saved on your storage or in your cloud storage. Under templates, you can open templates because you can also create kind of like pre-saved documents with an Affinity Designer extension. And if you find yourself using a certain document setup over and over again, this is really, really handy. So when I click on templates, it brings me here on my iPad internal storage to my templates folder, which I created manually for myself. And this is where I have some client templates, some templates for products. Like this is, for example, a template for a puzzle design for my Redbubble shop. And if you've taken my pattern design courses, I have quite a few repeat pattern templates, even though I have to admit that I use most of the time the diamond repeat template. So when you click on this template, it will open it. And the template that we have seen here in this templates folder, it will not be overwritten, essentially. Okay, so now we created a new document. It's not saved anywhere. If I just want to get rid of it, I click this X symbol and I just close it without saving. Under lessons, there are some tutorials that you can find within the iPad version. And I also take advantage of this help section where you can find everything. So if you type in, for example, vector brush, like you start typing at least, you get like a whole library of topics, and you can do that, of course, online, but you can also do that within your iPad, within your software. Basically, you can look for some answers. And then under account, that's also very handy also for this course. Under account, when you register, you get some free brushes, free pixel brushes and free vector brushes and some textures. And anything that you also kind of connect through the Affinity Designer store. For example, I bought this El Malo illustration kit by Frank and Toon. You can also manage it from here. Like I actually have it on my iPad storage and I save all the goodies that I bought in shops later on also on my desktop storage. So that's why there's this cloud icon, because I didn't download it through this interface here. So account, and under settings, you have a few general settings here that you can change. For example, under user interface, you can change the background gray level. So usually your canvas that you start with will be white, but there's also this background area. We'll head into one document to show you an example in a second. Here is where you can change the gray level of this background area. You can also switch to the left-handed mode. You can set the undo limit, so this is also to save, maybe to optimize, better said, your iPad storage. And this is, for example, where you can also upload extra fonts, because Affinity Designer doesn't come with like a fully blown library of fonts, so this is where you can add those too. One thing that is a bit of a difference between Adobe and Affinity is that all this artwork that you're creating in Affinity, it's on your local storage. So there is no cloud connection. It will not be synced to any cloud account, which I don't mind, because I'm pretty consistent with saving up my backups on my iPad storage. You can also have such a solution as Dropbox. Now, we will be using a lot of basic and intermediate and even advanced tools in Affinity Designer as we proceed with our project. All you gotta know is that the majority of your tools are here on the left side: the Move tool, the Note tool. This is where you find the Pencil tool and the Pen tool. In case of doubts, there's this small question mark icon here that will give you a bit of a preview and a bit of a cheat sheet. Super important, Affinity Designer is both for vector art as well as for pixel art. Over here you have this blue Affinity Designer icon, but when you click on it, you can also change to the pixel persona and use, kind of combined pixel art with vector art. And as you switch personas, the interface will change a little bit, because you will get access to the tools that are specific to raster art, basically. There's also the export persona, which I don't use that much, because lately at least, I don't create super big files with multiple artboards where I want to export a lot of things at the same time. But if you needed that, there's the export persona. So we're just gonna go back to the designer persona. When creating an Affinity Designer, this is what we will stick to 99.5% of the time. Because we'll be focusing on vector art. And then here on the right side, you have some studio panels. This is where you have your layers, for example. Here you access the brush studio. When you're using symbols, this is where you can access them. This is what I use a lot when I create repeat patterns. This is where we have our assets library. For example, this is my assets library. So this will be the focus of the course. This is where the good stuff begins. So here, also a question mark, you have your asset studio. And then I also often use the transform studio. And from the navigator, this is where you can check the grayscale of your art. This is what I also use most of the time whenever I create something new. Over here you have the context toolbar. This all looks a little bit maybe intimidating, but this is actually one of the reasons, number one reason why I like this synergy between Adobe Fresco and Affinity Designer, is that Fresco has some things, just a few, that Affinity doesn't have. And I still keep coming back for my final art to Affinity Designer just because it's so powerful. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it. That's why I like teaching Affinity Designer based on a project. You just tackle a project, for example, a botanical illustration or a botanical poster. And as you create it as you go, you learn all the tools that you gotta learn, basically. Now let's move to Adobe Fresco. So. Adobe Fresco, let me show you the icon. So this is the icon for Adobe Fresco. You can get this software from your App Store. And this is what the interface looks like. If you're familiar with Adobe products, then it might look familiar, it looks very similar. And one difference between Affinity versus Adobe is that it's all saved in the cloud. So Fresco has this seamless integration of Adobe Cloud, and for some people it's super useful. If I was creating anything here on my iPad and then I went back to work further on my computer, then all those files would show up there automatically. So Fresco is also a painting and a drawing app for the iPad. It's developed by Adobe, obviously, and it's available for the iPad, for iPhone, and for Windows. I had a question in one of my Facebook groups why they cannot find it on their MacBooks or iMacs. It's because there is, as far as I know, there is no desktop version. I think they target mainly iPads. Now, the good news is that, and I don't want to pass on any judgment here, but Fresco is for free, which, yeah, I was surprised because basically Adobe puts a subscription on everything. And of course, for Fresco, you can also get the subscription version, which has a few more options, but you can start with Fresco right away. I mean, even Procreate, I think, I haven't checked lately, but I bought Procreate for $9.99, and Fresco is for free, and it has everything. It has vector tools and it has pixel tools, and it's completely usable for beginners. So I was really positively surprised that it's a nice tool to work with for the iPad, which I personally love. So you can also get a standalone subscription for some extra features for Adobe Fresco. Then it costs $9.99 but per month. And you can also get it in case you're using Photoshop. You can get it as part of the Photoshop and Fresco plan, and then it costs something like 21 euros, I think. What is the difference? The paid version has some additional features. I cannot really tell you because I never had the paid version, so don't be surprised if you have the paid version and things look differently. But I heard that it has more brushes and more customization features. It also gives you the ability to export high resolution exports. So here, for those artworks that I created, I would have some limits, but it never really stopped me because I work just in one particular dimension, either 3000 pixels or 4000 pixels square, and this dimension is fully, it's working, so I can export it, so for me it's not a problem at all. The paid version also has an increased cloud storage, and I think you also have more, things like more blending modes and a better layer management option. But for me personally, the free version is enough, and I don't insist that you have to buy the paid version. So this is our interface. Whenever we will be creating a new document, we'll be doing that together in one of the lessons. You can create your custom sizes, and you can just hit this plus icon, or over here, hit create new, and create a new document very, very fast. And then we can, for example, open this monsters gardening illustration that I was working on for my portfolio so that I can show you the inside of the interface. So it's a little bit more limited, maybe because I have the free version compared with Affinity Designer. And actually, I started this monsters illustration in Fresco, but then, ta-da! I brought it to Affinity just because the interface is a little bit simpler. You have fewer options, but maybe it's even better for beginners because you might not feel as intimidated compared to the Affinity Designer. What I like about it is that it also has vector brushes, which you can access here, and all the other tools, you can access them here on the left side. It has pixel brushes. It has very praised live brushes, watercolor and oil for the free version that behave pretty much like the real deal, like the real watercolor and oil paints. Here you have things like, the eraser, the smudge tool, the move tool, this, what is it called, the bucket tool. So this is how you fill your shapes with color. We will be doing that too. And then here you have your layers panel. By tapping it, you can just close it and open it. Here you get, so the second icon, you get some extra layer properties. For example, you can lower the opacity. Here I lowered the opacity of my sketch. And over here, this is what will be applicable for our course. You get access to the symmetry tool, which we will be using as well to create our vector assets with the symmetry option in Fresco. This is it. And then the plus symbol, this is how you create a new layer. The eye symbol, you can make a layer visible or invisible. Here is the clipping mask symbol, and that's pretty much everything that I'm using in Adobe Fresco. We will see that in action together. And this icon here allows you to publish and to export your artwork. Now the question is, the good question is, why do I use both? Why can't I just stick to using Affinity Designer? So first of all, the symmetry tool. This is at least a recent update, I think either from July or even August this month, 2024, at the moment of filming this course. I can very quickly use the symmetry tool while using the vector brushes that I like. So that's already a plus. You can go around that in Affinity Designer by, you can draw just one side of your object and then copy it and then flip it and mirror it. Yeah, you can also work with symbols, but I like the speed of work with the symmetry tool here in Fresco, and it's not a problem at all to then just export everything to Affinity, and I will show you how to export and work on the compatibility of what you create in Fresco so that it fits and it's workable in Affinity Designer. Number 2 is brushes. So I focus on using vector brushes here, and there's one category under all that is called jitter. And this is what I really like. I saved pretty much all of them to my favorites. Vectors tend to be very rigid and very smooth, and they look very polished, and some people don't like kind of the feeling that they give. So for me, using those jitter vector brushes in Fresco and then exporting them to Affinity is just a perfect synergy, an example of a perfect synergy, because I can create something very playful, especially here for children's book illustration. The lines are not so polished and they're a little bit unpredictable. So for example, there's this very heavy jitter brush. Let's go here. By the way, you have the color panel. And you can see what I mean, that those brushes are very fluid and they give a little bit more unpredictability. And also those brushes, they you can fill shapes in real time. So I think such brushes are called blob brushes. So when I import everything to Affinity, this shape, for example, will not have any stroke element, which means it will not have an outline, but it will only be fill. So is it 2 reasons? Yeah, it turns out it's 2 reasons why I really like combining Affinity together with Fresco. The jittery brushes and the new symmetry tool. And then I export everything to Affinity. Color changes are much easier. I have my pre-saved color swatches here. I can use, for example, the same fill color or the same stroke color option to select the same color across the entire artwork if I want to change it or slightly adjust it. I can use gradients here and transparencies, just like on the slide from this little bee UFO. And in general, textures. Also, I have my favorite textures that I also bought from some creators. So for me personally, Affinity is much more powerful. That's why it's a software of my choice for the end effect. So these were the main differences between the interface of Affinity and the interface of Adobe Fresco. We also briefly talked about the pricing, that Fresco is for free, Affinity is for a one-time payment. And then I also told you about why I like using both, sometimes at least, why I like using both programs.